All right, we are live with another edition of AI Office Hours. And man, we got a special guest today, our first guest on the show, actually, Rob Yelle from AI12Z. And the
What an honor.
normal
Welcome
cast
to the
of
show, Rob.
characters. Yeah, and we've also got Riley McMeekin joining from Dotfusion, who's going to be talking a little bit about AI and how it impacts design and UX. And just before we get started, just the idea behind the show is to open up a half an hour every week for folks to ask us anything and introduce a new guest and a new technology, share with all the folks what we've been up to, what's been challenges for us, what's working really well. I think we're in the state right now where everything's an experiment to some degree, but products are maturing in the AI space. So yeah, maybe just to kick things off, let's do like just a quick roundtable and a quick introduction, and maybe just a little bit about what's going on in your world. And then we're going to give Rob a little bit of the focus to tell us a little bit more about AI12Z. And hey, Riley, how are you doing? What's going on in your world?
Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, just really a lot of experimenting with the latest and greatest in AI tools when it comes to creative asset creation and UX UI design. Because there are so many out there, trying to kind of hone in on some specific programs that I find most helpful. Ranging from Manus, which I use to kind of come up with functionality requirements that I can use to kind of spin out prompts that will help me get some wireframes together, and then obvious ChatGPT for some image creation, Nano Banana, and some other ones as well. But yeah, just really having some fun with it and pretty excited about the capabilities right now and the capabilities that are to come in the future.
Cool, man. And Dave, what are you going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so today, just sort of going over all the crazy stuff that's been going on in the world of AI. I've been working on a lot of automations. I've been doing some custom app development, going deep on that stuff. Really just excited to sort of hear some stuff that's going on in Rob Yelle's world and sort of hear more about what's going on the product dev side there, and get some perspective, because I know that we lean on their product a little bit for some of our solutions. So yeah, just sort of watching all the weekly developments very closely, and lots is happening on a weekly basis. So just trying to stay on top of everything as it's as the new stuff comes out.
Sweet. And Rob, you usually hit us from the marketing side. What do you got in store?
Yeah, funny enough, I've been spending a lot of time in Copilot because a group that I work with, a bunch of marketing managers, have been kind of directed to only use Copilot. So we've been looking at it for market analysis, looking at data, looking at social media numbers, Google ads, trying to pull out insights and performance, see what's doing well and what's not so good, and then just building spreadsheets, which is not always marketing and fun.
That is the KPI department, and we've come a long way. It seems like years ago that we were freaking out about Manus, which is still my sidekick pal when times are bleak. I call on Manus still. But hey, Rob, let's open the floor to you, because you've kind of cut out some time in your afternoon, as has anyone listening now and taking time later. Thanks for joining in. Big thanks and a shout out and introduction to Rob Yelle from AI12Z. What do you got?
Thanks,
cooking,
everybody. Yeah, I work in global enablement, but really AI12Z holds a promise. Our founder and CEO, Bill Rogers, has always simplified complex technology. Back in the day, he created WYSIWYG editors, and he created a great content management. And then when he started to work in AI himself, and he says, there's a niche that I can fill, he was very unsatisfied with working directly with the LLMs in order to get things accomplished. Again, working with Copilot, working with Salesforce and Agentforce, he kind of saw that there was a hole for something that was highly polished, ready to deliver, and something people could rely on and really, use on an enterprise level. So the product was born out of that, and it's been simplified with every iteration. I think when David mentioned a moment ago that we're all in a 24-hour news cycle around AI, and these new LLMs that come out increasingly faster, increasingly more powerful. They're all sort of competing with each other, aren't they? So
Yeah.
Google, everything you get from X, everything you're getting from any one of the providers, they want to one up themselves. But we found, an LLM like ChatGPT 4o Mini, little rock star. It's a hard-working little platform, or I'll say an LLM that's just capable of great RAG-based queries and very good for the React kind of agentic reasoning engine.
Latency is getting better and better by the day. Yeah.
And I think you guys had mentioned while we were preparing for the call and just chatting as professionals that the cost per token and the speed and performance is it's a big dynamic as soon as you start to get into the enterprise and scaling. You want to make something available to the public. It's one thing for an individual to hammer on their own keyboard and to use something that's going to cost them a couple of bucks. It's another thing if a company's going to pay a couple of bucks for every person who's then using it. They start to think really hard about that. And so we've always been focused on, being at that, fraction of a cent or, pennies in order to accomplish what other people are charging dollars for.
Awesome.
Hey, Rob, do you want to describe your product, the AI1-Z product? And I'll kind of create some color around how we use it. But yeah, just for the future snippets of the show, I'd love to just highlight how you describe the product.
It's a digital experience platform that's based upon chat and really the segment of one. And so now everybody who's coming and asking a question gets a context of who are you? What are you looking for? And then that's remembered. So when we build these digital assistants, we now believe they're going to become the the brand's voice to the general public. So they're going to go forward and they're going to educate it on the tone. They're going to educate it on the phraseology, the other things that they want to have conveyed. Think of it as when you're doing a prompt, it's not a hot shot, but it's like paragraphs of information. Now we're presenting that as an application that's going to be able to address, a particular brand's every visitor. And we believe that this idea of producing a digital assistant or a chatbot, chat has a bad rap though. A lot of people are used to those intent-based chats. Think of some other platforms like Adrift or whatnot, where you answer one question, you might get another question, and they build all those models. Horrible. The new model is just listen to them, reason with them, look at the repository of information you have at your fingertips, and then make a decision. Should I just answer this question, or should I surface, like an agent that's going to look in my CRM, my CDP, my PIM, and provide a more thorough answer for them and really alleviate their call centers and the friction that the customers are having with their brand. Really, it's just about reducing friction and increasing enjoyment.
Yeah.
We're very keen on that.
One of the great uses that we found amongst many, but a key tenet is for our Dotfusion's work in the commercial real estate sector. And something that your tool does that we haven't found easily manageable in other tools is the ability to go in and pull information from a rent sync or a kind of a property inventory system, and not just pull up a web link of where to find your property. Let's say you're looking for a place near Toronto with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom or something, but your tooling is actually pulling up React components and carousels and giving a full experience within a chat interface, which is really cool. And there's all kinds of applications for that. I think the main ones we've been talking about is hotels and resorts, airlines, anything where you need maps in there. You have a great product for performing arts centers.
Telecommunications is another one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the use cases are almost limitless. And I think Rob hit on something really important, that the solutions have to be practical and shippable. And we're getting all of these new solutions that are coming in and affecting our tech stack. But at the end of the day, the products that we rely on to ship things for our customers need to be 100% watertight at an enterprise level. And I think that's a really important part of this, is that these solutions aren't just a novelty, that works 50% of the time. They're very rock solid, and they're changing the way that people are experiencing the site and making it easier and raising conversions. And I think probably Riley can speak to that as well from sort of a UX side, that it's sort of these types of technology are really pivoting the way that people use the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just like my experience working with Rob's product has been quite amazing to see how how flexible and how quickly it can evolve. And as a designer, as you're dreaming up these things along with the client and adding new features to it, just the ability to integrate that those changes as quickly as we have been amazing. And we talk about the different clients and industries that we service. And for another example, with telecom is if you've got a user that is going to the site looking for a specific TV package or phone package, rather than using chat to just send them to another page where they have to scroll down and then find something that works for them, they're going through a number of prompts within the chat, and then we're able to present a carousel of those products exactly tailored to the specific needs for that client. Again, like Rob said, creating that, reducing the friction, and in the end, a better experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, Riley, when we talk about the kind of presentation layer of this stuff, that's important when you're thinking about product development, because we don't want, I don't know, Salesforce is a good example of a very restricted environment to create presentation on. They have the internal system pretty dialed in, but it's so much friction to create on top of that. But with AI 1 to Z, like, we can style it out, any way we want. Maybe just touching on style, what have you been playing around with in the UX space? How is AI performing as something that creates design to the standards that you want?
Yeah, I have had mixed results with it from the design side of things. From the UX side, it's been quite helpful and has made my job easier, getting kind of ideas into a workable prototype state a lot quicker, which is helpful to be able to work with the client to make sure that their needs and goals are being met in terms of user experience. And then once that's done, it's essentially kind of the boring part is putting all that stuff together. Then it's layering on the design to that. And what I was kind of getting to, mixed results, is that I find that my experience so far with AI when it's coming to the design is that it has a mind of its own. So
it's a good point.
I have, and with so many tools out there, I've experimented using the same prompt or similar prompts across multiple different multiple different AI programs, and getting very different results, even though I'm using the exact same prompt. And then I'll use the same prompt again within it, and I'll get another completely different result. So sometimes it actually creates a little bit more work when I find if I could just go in hands-on, like, it gets me started and I can kind of polish it and work it myself, it's better. But as I said, for me today, what I find most useful is on the UX side, is being able to, throw a bunch of features and use cases into a prompt and have it kind of put together a rough prototype of how the user experience is going to be, and getting me off the ground a lot quicker, so that I can start designing quicker and move the project along quicker. So that's been my experience so far.
And Dave, speaking of like tooling, I know you're kind of leading. You're the head chef. What kind of, you got any new knives and spatulas that you've been?
There's a lot that's been happening in the model hemisphere with like advancements. I was talking about this a little bit last week with extremely large token models coming out. Like Meta's got a 5 million and 10 million token experimental model. And the reason why this is interesting for me is we're working on some data projects where we've got 30,000 stores worth of retail data, analytics data from multiple social platforms, and all of these pieces of data that we're trying to build relationships between. And these models are going to allow us to take monstrous amounts of historical data for context, as well as present data, and be able to put together insights about data that we never as humans could do, and we couldn't do with sort of like the 1 million token models. And now that we're getting to this size where we're able to take a snapshot look at that much data and get some real valuable insights, it's amazing, because it's going to start to change the world of data analysis in retail.
Cool.
I would just love to chime in on what David said right
Yeah,
there,
of course.
because our primary audience is digital assistants that are on a website. But David, what you mentioned might be something where you construct a prompt, then you go pop down some toast and make a cup of coffee before you get results back. Like a lot of people don't understand, like this might be tomorrow before they've crunched all of the numbers for Applebee's across the planet.
Precisely. And I think Rob, you're bang on, and it's sort of like these, it's not the same expectations of someone that's using a pedestrian sort of web-based model. These are going to be like API integrations into tooling, which will allow people to, like I was saying, deduce things that even the most seasoned retail veteran with a gut check on their data won't be able to put together the relationship. So yes, there will be caveats to that, which will be like, you know, the speed at which things are done to look at that much data, but just the ability to look at that much data at one time. And then I think growing on that speed at which that takes place, and sort of like the infrastructure that those large models sit on, which allow them to work at a reasonable speed. But I think that is very valid that Rob brings that point up.
Well, David, it makes me think that when you're done this exercise, you'd have a board ready dossier ready to deliver. So someone can go in a battle and say, here's where we need to invest $500,000 or $500 million, versus we're answering questions almost in real time on
Precisely.
the website. But since it's publicly addressable, we still have the opportunity to dive deeper and provide some artifacts and keywords and things along those lines. But it is fascinating where it can take us. As when Riley was speaking, I thought it was human inspired, AI refined, human approved. So like a sandwich, inspiration, let AI go do the work, and then you say whether or not it passes the test, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Rob, because when Riley was talking about reprompting with the exact same thing and getting different results, I was thinking, how much more human can you get than that? Because if I give Riley a task with a set of instruction, then 10 minutes later, I give him a task in 2 alternate universes, he would produce 2 different results too, right? So it's kind of like, it's mimicking that, that sort of like essence of like, figuring things out in the moment based on whatever tools it has. So it's kind of interesting, but I agree that you can take that same prompt in Nano Banana, for example, even like with regards to creating something like a cool office background, and you can hit that generate button with the same prompt 10 times and you'll get, you know, a bunch of different variations and different looks. So the way that it interprets those prompts in the context of what all the other information that it's using is interesting.
Well, isn't it kind of training us with the hot shots to say, spin this again, run this give me a different outcome? Like that's almost the operating procedure is, don't give me the same thing twice. That's a waste of my button click. I didn't click it on accident.
It's really getting lucky. Hey, just before, Rob, I want to get some of your thoughts there, but just wanted to say thanks again to anyone who's kind of taking time in their day to listen into the show, or folks tuning in later. We've got Rob Yelle, our special guest from AI1-Z, and the usual gang from Dotfusion, Toronto AI, DRH Group, and the conglomerate of Tricycle AI. Hey, Rob, what do you got cooking over there? You work mostly with CMOs and kind of people up in the marketing ladder that not only need to be producing cool stuff that's meaningful and, you know, gets attention and conversions, but you got to supply them with the data. I think you were alluding to that a little bit.
Yeah, they often have lots of data that takes them forever to get through, but even working with them to kind of speed up the brainstorming process, working with simple models, and I was kind of chatting that, you know, this one group that I'm working with, they are a Microsoft house, and so they've been kind of mandated to use Copilot, which for better or for worse, at least they're using something. I'd love to have them delve a little bit more, but there's concerns about privacy, there's concerns about information and proprietary data and sales that they're still concerned with. So we're taking it in baby steps, which is a bit challenging. Like when I hear you guys talk about certain things, and I know in some entrepreneurial circles that I'm in, they dive into it. But when you're working with these enterprises, these publicly traded companies, it's a lot slower that I'm finding the take on. But just getting into that and changing the mindset of using this tool to help you has been a bridge that I've been working to help cross. And it's honestly, it's slower than I had hoped, but it's getting there. And I think that's where they're seeing it. They're having those aha moments where when they start putting in some of their data, even if it's just social media results or event attendance, something like that they can look at and then pull some insights that they would have taken them hours to do. They can get it done in minutes. And I think those are these small wins we're trying to accomplish. And even just brainstorming ideas on campaigns based on their customers or their target markets to like what would really appeal to these people based on the offering that they have in these different centers. So I'm working with a group that are centers are across Canada, and they all have different customer bases. They all have different stores. How do they line up those things, but layer in the AI tool to help them speed up that process and make it more efficient for them?
Yes. Speaking of shopping centers and in the kind of enterprise space, maybe this is a good one for Rob Yelle to get your philosophy on this, but we're working on a project where a shopping center wants to experiment a little bit about introducing voice agents to augment and even replace some of the customer service staff. But the client comes to us with this dream that's kind of like this iceberg thing floating on the water, and we're realizing that the real work is that body of ice underneath the water. Like what we got really like, what if there's a bomb threat? What if we need to hand off to security? Can it send a text message? What's your philosophy, Rob Yelle, about creating the rails around what could go wrong?
I think the brick and mortar, a lot of people believe, is getting closer and closer to the AI and the digital assistant mentality. Because today I shop in big box stores and I self-checkout and walk around with my smartphone. I'm scanning what I put in my cart. I walk out the door and the cameras have identified me as not a shoplifter, or they're like, hey, you have to go through a particular process. What I'm thinking would be even more prevalent is being able to just surface people, their QR codes that can lead them to items of interest that have gone on sale and other things that can just bring them closer to their, not virtual reality. We don't need people walking around with goggles on or their faces in their phone constantly. But if this becomes more of a thing where if you want to buy an item, you can check it out, you can pay for it, you can walk out the door with or without some packaging, that becomes, I think, more and more prevalent. And these shopping centers have that intelligence on what did they ask for, and so now you can be on your smartphone and say, I'm looking for shoes that match my tux and I'm going to a wedding. It's not going to bring me into Payless. It's going to bring me to the, someplace else. So I could be in a complex and it could traverse me to the right place to find what I'm looking for. And maybe merchandisers don't want that. They want people to meander in and out of their stores, but human beings are looking for efficiency, and AI can now add that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got me thinking about just privacy in general. And every day I hear something new about CCTV cameras now doing facial recognition, and the traffic cameras are picking up details on your car and who you are. And I spent a lot of time in Cambodia, and they kind of copy what China does, and they've got that whole kind of social tracking phenomena going on. And anyone want to talk a little bit about privacy and what it means to like be a human in the age of being tracked everywhere and having AI kind of make some assumptions on who you are and what you're going to do next?
Rob, you go ahead.
No. I wanted to. That's such a heavy, super topic, and I know I'm conscious of this time. I just wanted to say something interesting that kind of connects what Rob was saying and what Chris was saying, and it's something I'm wondering about when it gets to privacy. So I was just reading that I think it's the Gap. They're introducing AI in change rooms, which I think is weird. And what it's going to do is it can look at what you're wearing and then suggest accessories and things to that. And I'm like thinking, so I'm in a change room and they have an AI watching me and what I've brought in to try on, and then it's going to suggest things and tell me what it costs and stuff. But there is this privacy layer. Like, when are people going to be like, whoa, that's too much? It's helpful.
I think you just hit on it though. I think you hit on it. The helpfulness has to surpass the creepiness for it to be like palatable, right? So it's like, okay, well, maybe this is a little creepy, but it just got me this shirt that looks pretty awesome, right? So you're like, okay, I'm gonna let it slide, right? And it's like, I think more to, like on Chris's question about the expectation of privacy, it's sort of like that whole whatever is filmed in public is like fair game, and whatever is filmed in a private establishment is fair game if you adhere to their like usage policies by walking through the door. So it's almost like I do see that there's a scary invasive side to it, but also I see that like every camera feed that's out there can have layered AI on top of it, which keeps us safer. And I saw this technology a while ago where this guy had taken video footage of active shooter situations and built a body language model regression around what an active shooter looks like before they become an active shooter in the body language. So now they're able to put this over camera systems and predetermine people who have suspicious body language, which may translate into them turning into a shooter within the next 2 minutes. And I think that's interesting because there's all these things about criminal profiling that criminals don't realize that profilers have always known about criminals. And now we're putting this AI sort of level to that. So that's just like the side of like how that can help us from a safety perspective. But, you know, I think catering to consumer behavior is not something that's new, and having cookie tracking and tracked site experiences, which translate towards things getting served to you where you're like, wow, is this thing listening to what I'm saying? And, you know, but at the end of the day, I think what retailers and what businesses are trying to do is create a better experience for the end user that's more frictionless, and, you know, albeit sometimes crosses that creepy line. But like I said, it's probably like if the benefit outweighs the creepiness, then thumbs up.
Yeah.
There's
sorry, Rob, go ahead.
One thought I wanted to share on that is David, we've kind of shifted from a society that used to secretly write in our diary and hope no one read it. So now we share everything online and get upset if people don't read it.
Yeah.
So the idea of privacy is, you know, you'd probably go to that mirror, Rob, and you'd probably have to click a QR code, but then it's going to then send you snapshots of all the cute little outfits you could have bought.
Precisely.
Your figure and your shape and your size. And it'll then send you coupons for that, you know, 2XLT for the bald guy, whatever, you know.
Love it. Love it.
Hey, Riley, we always get questions about the tools that we use, and we probably use 80% of what's available out there or have experimented with that. Maybe this is between you and Dave, or to get both of your feedback, but what have you settled on? What are you using in your world, Riley, for kind of UX and kind of doing some prototypey stuff? And then Dave, you know, what are you finding to be like the top tool if someone's tuning in and they want to save a bunch of time and just get started making stuff? Maybe Riley, you first then.
Yeah. The two that I've been using most is Manus and Bolt. So for Manus, to kind of walk you through my process of coming from, you know, when we're starting to work on a project with a client, we're going through requirements gathering, we're having several, you know, meetings. They're giving us documentations such as an RFP. You know, we're doing our own kind of requirements gathering. I'm using Manus to take all of that information and put it into a structure that I can then use as a defined prompt that I put into Bolt. So Bolt is like a lovable, like a what's another one out there that I know that we've been, Replit is another one. I've kind of settled on Bolt. I've had the best experience with that, but I can kind of synthesize all of that information from the transcripts to the documentation and come up with a detailed prompt that I can put into Bolt as a business requirements doc that will then start to work out the prototype. Okay, you know, this is what it needs to do, as these are all the different types of users. And then from there, because I am, you know, you still have to be familiar with all of that information and know, okay, well, if I'm, and also an experience as a UX designer, as you kind of work through the iterations of, okay, well, it'd be great if maybe as a user, this is where that feature was, and maybe not so kind of high up on the page. Maybe it needs to be moved down and work through several prompts to kind of get it tuned in. And like I said before, it just allows me to get to that prototype stage so much quicker, so that I can get onto design. So through the iteration stage, getting into like, about 75, 85% there, while we're still working with the clients to kind of finalize those requirements. As we're having meetings with them, I'm going into Bolt and saying, actually, the client doesn't want this anymore, so remove that from the prototype. So it's been a cool experience to kind of get to that point with those tools. But those are kind of the two that I've really settled on. ChatGPT is kind of my everyday thing. It's kind of replaced my Google, for just simple searches and stuff. I like some of the image creation capabilities, but yeah, that's been it for me. David?
Amazing. Yeah. And I think that's great. And it's also great to see Riley getting in there and embracing some of that stuff and some of the stuff that he's creating and how quickly he's creating it. Because like I've worked with Riley for quite a while, and it's just cool to see Riley's game change as like the tools come out. And it's the same thing for me, is like tools like Replit have made it very easy to get POCs out the door and just test to see if the concept works, right? And I think Replit's my go-to, and since Agent 3 came out last week, which has like autonomous mode and self-testing, and it's able to go through and configure APIs and get it's really like, it's getting to the point where we're almost at like a team like level, where it's calling in the architect to do review, and it's calling in the tester, and it's this multi-agentic framework, which is finally starting to make sense from a developer workflow standpoint. And then also, like I'd say the stuff that I'm using recently are tools like API platforms like KIE.ai and Open Router, which allow you to experiment on the API side with a variety of different models and building and using image and video generation and music generation with API integrations and stuff like this. So those are the like sort of things that I've been looking at lately, just to try to leverage that power into some of the projects that we're working on. But really cool, and always good not to be fully down the tunnel in those products, because there's so much coming out. Don't forget to sort of look over your shoulder, because like you don't want to be the guy that's like too focused on something, and then like something's like just zipping by at like light speed because there's another product. So just, my advice is use some of those daily tasks within ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity to be doing that research on disruptive AI tech and how it relates to what you're doing with it, so that you're not missing things as you're down the tunnel, because it's very easy to get down that tunnel right now.
Yeah. And speaking of lightning speed, Rob Yelle, if you're up for it, can you share a little bit about what you're thinking down the road? What's the roadmap for AI 123? What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah,
just increased simplification. And since I too talk to a lot of CMOs, and I'm obviously here to enable partners and agencies, they don't want another heavy workload. They want something that's going to just do what you expect it to do. So in our own deliverables, it's going to be just more automation on helping people with their style guides and their brand guidelines, and the generation of variables for different segments and different languages and things along those lines. That's in our vision. But also MCP, and just
I was going to say,
to be developed. So because with the React, you really have to have access to these other data repositories.
That was my next question. When's MCP sort of like going to hit the scene? And I think that's
it seems to have hit the scene. It's just there are a lot that are kind of immature right now, and ultimately everything just goes to the REST API. But MCP gives you a bit of clarity on how you might want to interact with, let's say, a Shopify or another commerce platform more readily for a product return or a product selection, while you're still asking questions based upon RAG ingested content and helping with their style. And hey, dude, here's what you need for a surfboard, and then show the surfboards, right? So,
love it.
Absolutely, and it just kind of makes me think in general about what's happening next, and kind of a cohort we didn't really call out, but We do have other agencies that pay attention to our feeds and what we have to say. And I just want to say, if anyone's kind of checking it from an agency perspective, we've seen the AI 1-2Z product grow, and you're rapidly tuning that product and making it really easy for a creative and SI kind of juxta agency like Dotfusion is to really adopt and bring the product to market. So, yep, time goes by pretty quickly.
It does.
We're a little bit over, but there's no hard stop here. But I just want to kind of leave the call with, Rob's going to leave his contact information. He's already kind of connected to this on LinkedIn. I really encourage you to reach out to him, get a demo of AI 1-2Z. It's super cool, really mature, enterprise ready. And those are the kind of products that we like to bring to the market. Well, we're kind of in the laboratory behind the scenes as well. But why don't we leave it at that? Parting words, Rob, you want to leave us with anything else? It's all about
just my email is really easy, just rob@ai1-2z.com. And you're absolutely correct, Chris. We would love to support your clients and anyone interested in seeing what the platform can do. And we'll typically give you a mock-up so you can see what a digital assistant might be able to do for your website, with some simple out-of-the-box ingestion and integrations.
Really
Awesome.
cool.
Great job.
Hey, gang, I appreciate everyone for making time in the afternoon to join our show here. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rob, for stepping in. And
thank you, Rob.
To hang out with you. Thanks to folks who are watching now and later. And we'll be back at the same time next week. I'm going to find the end the stream button here. And just wish you a great day. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rob, for joining us. Take care, guys.
Rob. Take care.